Hari Om. We come to what is Yoga Sutra is identified by Ashtanga Yoga. In fact, nobody talks of Patanjali Yoga Sutra without referring to what is Ashtanga Yoga. And Ashtanga Yoga is the sort of a core contribution from the Upasana perspective of the Yoga Sutra. And therefore, anybody who wants to understand Yoga Sutra will have to understand Ashtanga Yoga as the fundamental way given by Patanjali. So there are Ashta means eight, and Ashtanga Yoga means yoga which has eight limbs. And what you see in this rather busy slide is the eight limbs starting from Yama Niyama at the bottom to Samadhi at the top. So what is visualized in this particular slide is that there are eight levels through which a yogi can pass through as he or she is in the state of yoga. And from the lower levels of yama and niyama, if they pass through all the other stages, they will eventually reach the state of samadhi, which is the state when one knows everything, and that is the ultimate state of freedom or moksha. So Yama, again, I talked about trust and verify principle, which is the reason why what is being represented on this particular slide is that if the yogi cultivates Yama, and what are Yama are being conveyed in the next two slides. So Yama and Niyama in detail I will elaborate in the next two slides. But if a yogi cultivates Yama, then the external orientation of the body and mind will come down. So that is the verification principle that has been given by Patanjali. So take on to Yama and your external orientation will come down. Take to Niyama, and if Niyama means doing activities which strengthen your personal discipline, and if you do those sort of activities, then the internal mind orientation, we talked earlier of Klesha and Vritti, that orientation of the mind jumping up and down, that will again come down. So that is a verification principle that is given here. If one attains some sort of success in pursuit of niyama. Now, the third level is asana, and this is the most popular aspect that is really known to people. Having said that, it's not really followed the way Patanjali has kind of articulated here. And what is the purpose of asana? Purpose of asana is probably not to, solve some of our health-related, stomach bloating-related problems, but effectively the awareness of the body's sensations is what is meant to come down if one does the asana properly. Now, why is this important? Because as one pursues yoga deeper and deeper, the capability of the mind to become stronger and stronger needs to get strengthened. But mind can only get stronger if the ability of the body is kind of, should I say, arrested, and ability of the body to distract us. So if we have a stomach ache, if we have a back pain, for example, then our mind then caters to the needs of the body. And if it caters to the need of the body, then the body will distract the mind, and therefore mind will not be in a state of calm to go higher and higher. So the purpose of asana is to lessen the awareness of the body sensation, therefore allowing the mind to focus on om, which is the reason why when performing asana, one should not just perform the physical asana, which is the external asana, but one should also be absorbed in the Om or the infinite as one is performing the asana. So both are meant to go parallelly rather than just perfecting our physical posture, so to speak. And that is the state of asana that one should attempt to. And as one becomes better and better with asana, then the ability of the body to distract their mind lessens, and that is the verification principle of asana. The fourth aspect that needs to be cultivated by a yogi is pranayama. Now, asana with pranayama is what is more popular yoga that we see all around us. And pranayama, which is nothing else but regulation of breathing in terms of breathing in, breathing out. When we are anxious, our breathing pattern is different. When we are in a state of calm, our breathing pattern is different. We are engaged in a heightened sense of activity, our breathing patterns are different. The whole idea is no matter what happens, if our breathing pattern becomes regulated, then there are some benefits that will come out of it. And what are the benefits? Karma itself is destroyed by pranayama. That's what Patanjali is actually stating, which means that as one crosses yama, niyama, and acquires proficiency in asana, then the sattva aspect expands. Our buddhi is permeated with more and more sattva as the rajoguna and tamoguna come down. As rajas and tamas, which are the drivers of activity, which are the drivers of karma, come down, then chitta shuddhi happens, avidya gets removed slowly, and if avidya gets removed, then this is the first step of weakening of karma layer, is what Patanjali is stating. But even Manusmriti says that pranayama together with Om ensures that our sensual orientations get dissipated and our mind becomes fit for concentration. So just see here that the mind, we are still trying to make it fit for concentration. Concentration does not come by just getting up in the morning and trying to focus on something and lo, we will attain concentration. It's not going to happen that way. We have to go in a structured way unless we have done yama niyama in our previous lives and therefore we are already placed well to take on to asana and pranayama from this particular life. But for somebody who's at the bottom of the scale, somebody like me, then clearly one has to start from the bottom to be able to reach higher and higher. So, a yogi has attained proficiency in yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama. Then the yogi becomes fit to do what is called as pratyahara. And pratyahara means nothing else but the highest form of sense control. So, if one talks about sense control, there are three ways in which sense control can be seen. So, one is you only enjoy objects which are not prohibited. Yeah. So, if alcohol is prohibited, if late night parties is prohibited, if eating animals is prohibited, then you don't do them, and therefore your senses are in control because they are only performing activities which are permitted, and they are staying away from activities which are prohibited. So that is one kind of sense control. The second kind of sense control is that we engage with all the vishaya, the objects in the world, only when they are needed, not because of greed, etc. So we don't. It's a need-based lifestyle, which is also a secondary level of sense control one can kind of conceive of. The third, which is a slightly higher level than the first two, is when we engage with the vishaya. Again, we may have certain vishaya, but often the idea of need and greed get mixed up. But if we engage with the Vishaya or objects without any sense of raga and dvesha or sukha and dukkha, I'm not getting joy in eating samosa. I'm eating samosa when I'm hungry. When I'm not hungry, I'm okay without samosa, even though it's dangling in front of me. When that sort of a lifestyle is cultivated, then it's slightly better than the need based lifestyle when it's really that I'm engaging with all the Vishaya without raga and dvesha. Now, these three forms of sense control progressively as one cultivates, then one reaches the level of pratyahara when mind is restrained and focuses on what it is meant to focus automatically. So, when if I'm told that I should concentrate on, say, a chair in front of me, I don't have to do much effort because I have attained proficiency in pratyahara. So, when I'm supposed to do it, I just do it immediately. That is the level of siddhi that a yogi will attain once he or she reaches the level of pratyahara. Now, these are what are called external anga, the bahya anga of the Ashtanga Yoga. But the last three, which is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, these three are called as the antarik anga or the inner anga of the Yoga Sutra, of the Ashtanga Yoga. Dharana is the ability to concentrate on something. Dharana is the ability to concentrate for a much, dhyana is the ability to concentrate for a much longer time. Whereas samadhi is not just concentration but absorption, where not only that the object is something that I'm able to concentrate on, it becomes part of my living experience. The distinction between me and my that object which I'm concentrating gets dissipated, both become one, and that absorption is the level of samadhi. And in this state, the buddhi no longer is projecting an object that it has seen or experienced from outside. That distinction goes away, and as is written here, the distinction between the yogi as a meditator, the act, the kriya of meditation, as well as the object of meditation, all of them come together, they become absorbed, and that is the level of samadhi. That is the meaning of samadhi. So we often, when we read stories of life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, we do read that the Paramahamsa often goes into the states of samadhi, and often for days, and people had to effectively resort to something strong to bring him out of the state of samadhi. Now, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi together are referred to by Patanjali as samyama rather than referring to them as separate, because all of them are effectively various levels of gradation of the same idea of coming together of Purusha with Prakriti in terms of them coming together from a samadhi perspective. So when samyama happens, that's when you really develop insight over the objects. Then your insight is more clearer. Till this time, the insight was more from a senses, mind, intellect perspective. But at the level of samyama, your insight is a lot clearer. Yeah, so this is the way Ashtanga Yoga needs to be understood in terms of gradation. Just to expand on yama, there are 5 yama, which is ahimsa, which is non-violence; satya, which is to talk the truth; asteya, which is refraining from stealing; brahmacharya is to effectively live a detached life; and aparigraha is renunciation of what you already possess. These are the sort of yama which Patanjali has referred to in the Yoga Sutra, and each and every yama has a verification principle also attached to it. So, as an example, if one practices ahimsa for a long period of time, then one is established in that state of ahimsa for a long period of time, then enmity is abandoned, which means that not only do others uh, not only do others are not seen as enemies by me, but even others do not see me as an enemy. So that is the verification principle given by Patanjali, and therefore a person who has practiced ahimsa can see for himself or herself whether this is the verification principle that the person has attained. Similarly, if one takes on to brahmacharya, then one attains more power in the sense that one's self-confidence is boosted by practice of continuous discipline, and that boost of self-confidence becomes obvious to somebody who's practiced brahmacharya, etc., etc. So 5 yama are given, 5 niyama are also given, which is cleanliness. Shaucha is cleanliness. Santosha, which is to be contented with whatever one has. Tapa we already touched upon earlier, so don't have to refer to it again. Swadhyaya and Ishvara Pranidhana is also something that we touched upon when we were talking of Klesha. Now, these are the 5 niyama which a yogi is meant to cultivate, and again from each and every one of the niyama which a yogi cultivates, there are benefits, and these are the verification principles that are also provided by the Yoga Sutra. You can read them at leisure, but it is preferable that you read the bhashyas given by the various bhashyakaras, so that these benefits are understood in a more clearer form. And then when one practices these niyama, then one can see the benefits from oneself, and then one's confidence in the Yoga Sutra is deepened, and therefore we are on the right path, so to speak. So the key point to note is that the yoga discipline is a process where integration is happening, which means that the time that we spend to time we spent in engaging with the objects, what that is doing is it's leaking my energy. It is leaking it, making it weaker and weaker. And what yoga does is strengthening us, and through strengthening, the avenues for leakage are kind of blocked, and therefore one becomes more and more aware of the reality. And as one lives with less and less distractions, one is eventually able to focus on the purusha, which is the source of purnatvam or completeness within our own selves. Yeah. Now, this sutra, which you see on this particular slide, is giving a gradation. Again, we have done Srishti earlier, so which is why this idea should hopefully be easier to understand, which is samyama, which is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. These have various levels of gradation. One is at the level of sthula, which means doing samyama at the physical object level, so to speak, on a physical object. Second is the samyama, which is at the level of swarupa, which means not only we see an object in terms of what utility it has for us, but we see an object independent of my own lens, so to speak. So that is the level of samadhi or samyama that I need to attain. And if I do that, then I am doing samyama at the level of swarupa of that particular object. The third level of samyama is at what is referred to as the level of Sukshma, which is the aspects of Tanmatra that are present within that particular object, Tanmatra, Mahabhuta, which are the sort of building blocks of each and every object. When I'm able to experience those aspects of every object, then that means I'm doing samyama at the level of Sukshma. Fourth is the level of Anvaya, where my dhyana, dhyarana, and samadhi is at the level of Triguna. So not only I'm able to not get distracted by the external aspects, not only I'm not able to be distracted by the internal aspects like the Tanmatra, but I get at the level of Guna, which are the building blocks for every object, including the object that I'm concentrating on. So if I'm able to reach this particular level, then this is the level of Anvaya. And the last level is Arthavatva, which is that I now know that whenever I look at everything and anything around me, I know the fundamental purpose for which that object came into this particular creation. And once I know the purpose of everything all around me, then everything around me loses its meaning. I no longer have any utility for it. And then there is no other purpose for existence, is what I come to realize. And then once I get into that particular realization, then I attain my own Purusha Prapti status. So these are the various levels of gradation, which is the reason why I emphasized on Srishti, because unless one understands Srishti very well, I cannot then comprehend the various levels of yoga that Patanjali has referred to in terms of the five levels that are given in this particular sutra. Now, there are some more verification principles given. Often, many people who read the Yoga Sutra are confounded by the sort of wonderful things that are conveyed by Patanjali. Patanjali says that various siddhis, or effectively magic, is what yogi attains, which means the yogi, if he attains to the state of anima, he can become small, he can make his body small. Laghima is when a yogi can make his body as light as cotton. Mahima is when yogi can enlarge his body. If you see again Sundarakanda, Hanuman is able to do all of these particular things, which is also a sort of a good example of why Sundarakanda should be seen from the lens that Hanuman is not really a normal person trying to help somebody. He's actually a yogi going through the stages of yoga. But these siddhis which a yogi attains, Hanuman is not really stuck in them. He attains these siddhis, but he's not got into some sort of arrogance that, look, I have achieved so much of siddhi, so I'm really great. He remains a Shishya of Rama, and his interest is to attain Sita and bring Sita to Rama. And that is the purpose for which these siddhis are used. So they are merely a verification principle for Hanuman that he is really in the right path of yoga, but these do not hold any interest beyond pursuit of yoga. And that is how we should understand all these siddhis also. That despite all the fancy things that these siddhis seem to convey, Patanjali also makes it very clear that these siddhis are merely a verification principle and nothing more beyond it. This sutra is not elaborated. Patanjali just says that the true insight of a yogi is has 7 stages. That's all that Patanjali says. He doesn't elaborate on what these stages are. But Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there are lots of people who've done bhashya on the Yoga Sutra, and thankfully, because of those bhashya, we're able to understand what these 7 stages are. So the bhashyakaras have actually said that the first 4 stages of insight pertain to liberation from karma. So we all do karma on account of the klesha and vritti, and a yogi attains liberation from karma, which means at the first level the yogi knows what is avoided, what needs to be avoided, and that there is nothing that needs to be known is what the yogi attains as an insight in the first level. Yeah, the desire to know itself ceases is what Hariharananda says. Now, the klesha that represent the causes of karma become eradicated, which is the second level of insight that the yogi attains. The third is the Nirodha Samadhi, and these are technical words. I won't elaborate on them. People are referred to the text itself. But again, the misidentification of Purusha with Buddhi. We earlier referred to the fact that we misidentify because of avidya, we think, and ahankara, we think Buddhi and Purusha are one and the same. But the third level of insight is such that I know that the Buddhi is an instrument, and that realization happens. I do not identify myself with my own intellect. And the fourth aspect is that I attain what is called as a Viveka Khyati. Now, if this insight is completely attained, karma stops. Yogi no longer does karma, and nishkama karma is the idea that comes out even in the Bhagavad Gita. So, all actions of a yogi are no longer to be viewed from the lens of what a normal person does, because the approach of a yogi to actions is completely different, and therefore, yogi no longer does karma. In fact, we also read earlier, if somebody remembers that Purusha or Ishvara does not is also not impacted by karma, and yogi also, if he has crossed the first four stages, karma no longer binds a yoga. Fifth level is stating that buddhi has served its purpose and it becomes redundant. So not only is the buddhi no longer relevant, buddhi itself becomes redundant. Buddhi comes under the control of purusha. Yeah. Fifth, guna also dissolves into its causal matrix. Guna are there. It's not that guna are not there, but guna no longer are able to bear any influence on the yogi. And freed from guna, Purusha then attains his or her own Swarupa. He becomes what is called as the state of Kevala, aloneness, not loneliness, mind you, aloneness, where he is separated from the organ of Buddhi. He attains what is called as Asamprajnata Samadhi, which is the highest level of awareness. And then, in that vantage point, it becomes apparent to a yogi that the worldly experience is nothing else but dukkha. Till at my stage, it is just a conceptual idea. I can appreciate it with some sort of inference, but it's not part of my experience. But in the highest stage, yogi sees it very visually that world is nothing else but a abode of dukkha. Now, this slide is trying to convey the four levels of samadhi. I don't think I should go into too much of detail here, except to say that there are two kinds of samadhi, in fact, four kinds, but two kinds are vitarka samadhi, where object is used as the item to concentrate upon, whereas vichara samadhi is where the sukshma aspects of the object become useful for the purpose of concentration. So, though the yogi is concentrating on the cow itself, it progresses from looking at cow in terms of its memory that is stored within my own mind of a cow. The word, the meaning of the cow is what becomes the object of concentration. It is mixed up with my samyama. But in nirvichara and savichara samadhi, I am the object, the external form of the object dissolves, the tanmatra also dissolves, and only its subtle energies, which led to its getting formed originally, become the object of dhyana. So my object of dhyana becomes more and more sukshma. And as one crosses these sort of levels, one will eventually attain the highest. So this slide is giving two examples, one that of Surya and one that of Om. And I will take up Om as the example, and you can refer to the other one by probably putting a pause and reading this in more detail. Savitarka Samadhi of Om happens when the idea, the chanting of Om is mixed up with the conventional meaning, the way I have understood as Ishvara. That meaning of and ideas of Ishvara get mixed up. I have a mental image of Ishvara. All of those get mixed up, and I'm able to concentrate on that particular idea of Om. Now, mind you, this is not to be confused with the normal idea of concentration of Om using senses and the mind, because here in this stage of samadhi, absorption is happening. But so therefore, it's at a much deeper level. But even absorption is happening with the conventional ideas of Ishvara that I have. That is the level of Savitarka Samadhi. But in Nirvitarka Samadhi, even these conventional ideas are eliminated and Ishvara begins to manifest in his own pure nature. So that is the Nirvitarka Samadhi. Savichara Samadhi, which is the higher level, happens when the pure the sattvic aspect of yogi of Ishvara is what becomes the meaning of Om, and the earlier stages where the conventional meanings as well as the the pure aspects of Ishvara as we had kind of studied, those also become more and more, eliminated, and the yogi is able to visualize yoga in a more purer sattvic form. Yeah, and yogi has completely lost his or her own self-awareness, and this is the state which yogi enters into what is called as a divine vision, so to speak. Nirvichara samadhi is when the absorption is so complete that any notion of time and space also goes away, and Ishvara is experienced as infinite, and I also become part of Ishvara, and therefore my experience is of a significantly higher order. Now, if one crosses these four levels of samadhi, and one may wonder, isn't it all there is, and what else is there beyond this particular state? The highest state is something called Nirbija Samadhi, where I don't need a Surya, I don't need an Om, I don't need a cow for the purpose of knowing its utility and knowing it is in a better and better form. Prakriti goes away. Yeah, and this is the state of Nirbija Samadhi. So, Bija means seed. Earlier, cow, Om, Ishvara, all of these were sort of Bija. These were the seeds which were used by me for absorption into the ultimate. But one is established in Nirbija Samadhi, then there is no Bija at all, there is no seed at all. My Samadhi is complete, and in this state, Prakriti goes away. So the image on top is actually stating that Prakriti goes away. Prakriti is saying Tata bye bye to us, and whether in a Sthula form or a Sukshma form, Prakriti has no utility to us. Prakriti completely evaporates. Or if you go back to the first image that we reflected, where we reflected Narayana and Mahalakshmi, Prakriti is in the form of Mula Prakriti for Narayana. It's completely under the control. It excites nothing within Narayana. Narayana is in complete control. It does not mean that Mula Prakriti does not exist, but it is dormant. Yeah, and this is the state when the highest state of yoga, and krama, which is progression of time, also comes to a halt here. And we earlier talked about transformation, and yogi develops such a subtle vision that even small transformations become visible to a yogi. But in the highest state of yoga, the movement of time also slows down. Time comes to halt slowly, 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 to such an extent that the wheel of time completely stops. The movement or transformation or parinama completely stops, and Prakriti becomes completely dormant, and Yogi becomes liberated from Prakriti and devoid of any purpose. The Guna, Mula Prakriti, all of them being devoid of any purpose, they become latent. And in this state of latency, consciousness or Purusha then is established in its own nature, its own Sachidananda Swarupa. And with this, the whole of Yoga and Yoga Sutra comes to an end. Thank you for reaching till this particular stage. We have actually completed the text of Yoga Sutra. I will probably I will talk a little more, give few more departing words in the next video, and then we can conclude this whole discussion. So I hope till now this point at a high level has been quite clearer. So let's pause this video. Thank you. Hari Om.